Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. Exciting announcement for all of my listeners. I've officially opened my exclusive group, the ProjectME Passive Income Posse, to the public. This group is by application only, so we can keep the group high vibe and spend our time, energy, and expertise only helping those of you who truly want massive success and impact. You get live weekly trainings from me, special guest coaches, and direct access to me and my business partner for all of your questions. To learn more and apply, go to projectmewithtiffany.com, click on Work With Me, and select ProjectME Posse. And of course, any questions, feel free to DM me at ProjectMeWithTiffany. Welcome to the podcast and posse, ProjectME with Tiffany Carter. I'm your host, and today we're going to fuck your mind. Point blank. That's what's happening because you all need it. And you know what? I need it sometimes too. So here's the thing that happens to all of us. We all tell ourselves lies, and the lies we tell ourselves, we tell them so often and for so long, we actually believe them. And then when we believe these stories that we tell ourselves, we end up manifesting them in our real life, which then reinforces the lie. And it's this really dangerous cycle that can go to super dark places. So today I brought on a guest whose story is a perfect example of the lies we tell ourselves and where that can lead. She figured out a different way, but she had to. It was life or death if she didn't figure out how to unravel those lies and actually step into her real truth. So I have on today Rubi Skilton. I'm so excited because she teaches people how to share their stories by using their voice and is showing you that you're more than your flaws. She's a podcast coach and an editor and just an amazing inspiration, and you guys will see why. What's up, girl?
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I have so many things to ask you. So let's start out because I just did a pretty big lead in, and people, I can imagine some of my peeps listening are like, that was really dramatic, Tiffany. Like how major could this girl's story really be? So would you mind, sharing with everyone what were the lies you were telling yourself? Like what happened here?
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I was born with an arm and a half, and I have a total of 7 fingers. So just that alone, I physically look different than everyone around me. And I thought that because of that, that would stop me from getting a boyfriend or being in a relationship. That would stop me from being successful because I didn't look a certain way, that I could not do certain things. And these were all lies that I kept telling myself growing up. But I had an incredible support system. That is my mom, that she never allowed me to say no. If I wanted to play basketball, she had me playing basketball. If I wanted to skateboard, she had me skateboarding. If I wanted to try gymnastics, I was out there doing one-armed cartwheels. So having her was incredible. But, growing up, you get all these peer pressures from classmates and the media. So for the longest time, for 12 years, I was wearing long sleeves because I was ashamed of my story. I was ashamed of showing my difference. And it happened so subconscious that I convinced myself that, this is my style. I love wearing long sleeves. But I was in fucking Texas.
You really convinced yourself.
Yeah. But I was growing up in Texas. So it was 100+ degrees all the time. So there is no logical sense of like, oh yeah, I do really enjoy like or wearing long sleeves when it's burning hot. So, it got to the point where I moved out to LA to pursue a career in music, and I was living by myself. Um, I fell into this depression, and I had no way of pulling myself out of it till, my boyfriend, we ended up getting together and he moved down here. And it was until last year that I looked at a photo of myself and I had gained over 200 pounds. And I just knew I couldn't continue that way. If I continued, like you said, I was going to end up like killing myself. And I was not about to do that. I wasn't about to give up on myself and what I wanted to accomplish in life.
So did you always use food since you were a little girl as like a source of comfort?
I want to say no, but it was something that I would go on these crazy diets and then binge eat and then be on a diet. And being Hispanic is so interesting because you're expected to kind of finish everything on the plate. I don't know, I'm just talking about my family, but it's like eat and, if someone offers you food, it's disrespectful to say no. But then your aunts and everything, they're always like, oh, what about the diet? And it's kind of like very confusing, especially growing up, especially when you're a child and you're easily influenced. And my mom was always the fitness person. She started and opened her gym at 18.
Oh.
So, yeah. So being in that situation, but also being in like, finish everything on your plate. And it's disrespectful to say no to, eating at someone else's house when they offer you. It was just very mentally draining. So yes and no to answer your question.
Yeah, I could see how that would be confusing. And now that I think about it, and I've shared about this before, my mom's anorexic and I was raised in the Midwest, which was it's starving children in Africa. Finish your plate, or like someone worked very hard cooking this meal.
Right.
It costs money to cook a meal. But it was like weird because so I did see my mom finish her plate, but she put like 2 carrots on it. So that was easy to finish.
Totally.
So I can relate to you. So your mom was also, like you said, a big sense of support, and she never said like, oh, you can't do it. She didn't baby you, which is great. Is that what made you feel empowered enough to go after the music industry? I mean, that is very intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, she never made me feel different. And I don't think I realized I was different until I was in middle school. And that's when the sweatshirt came on. And it was until last year that it came off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in middle school, like when the kid, like you realized it because that's when kids are nasty. Is that why?
Strangely enough, I was never bullied.
Really?
Never. Yeah. That's like something that kind of shocks me, and it's sad that it shocks me because bullying shouldn't happen, period. But unfortunately, it does. And to think that I was never actually bullied growing up is crazy. But what did happen was that my friends started dating and they started getting boyfriends and girlfriends and, oh, I have a crush on you and whatever. And that wasn't exactly what was going on my end. And I was like, okay, what's wrong, So I think we all go through that. Just like it's not that was something I just went through. We all go through that, especially during middle school years. But I knew there was something even more there. So yeah, it wasn't that kids were being nasty or that anything. If anything, I started being nasty to myself.
Because you weren't getting like the whole boy crush thing, and your friends were having all of it, which is all middle school girls talk about for my male listeners, like, and high school girls, really. That's like all we talk about for like hours and hours. So it's like you didn't feel like, you felt like probably like an outsider, right? Like you couldn't participate.
Right. And so it wasn't that my friends or my classmates were being nasty, but I was being so disgustingly gross to myself without even realizing it.
Wow, isn't that interesting? Is that I was bullied, and then I just kept that going. But what I often tell people is no one ever has been meaner to me than I've been to me. And it sounds like that's the same for you. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before around middle school, I did gymnastics, I played sports, but during middle school, I stopped that because who was I? Like, I wasn't worthy enough to be playing basketball. I was probably holding my team back, which was probably not true, but that's the lies that were happening in my head.
You guys, do you see why I had this light on? Because her story, I know you guys can relate to this that are listening. It's like, look at the power of lies. She wasn't bullied. She had this, amazing support from her mom. You actually were probably pretty talented in sports because you've been doing it since a young age. You were, really encouraged. Yet you told yourself, probably I'm holding the team back. Therefore, you stopped doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a whole domino effect.
Everything, yeah. It's, I stopped going out as much and just really became this scene child, this emo kid, and that's when the sweater came on. I keep going back to the sweater, but that was such a big part of me that and every picture was like my right side only because my left side was my bad side. And I would get severe anxiety at the thought of wearing tank tops or strapless. I lost friends because of it. It's ridiculous.
Well, I can see why you keep bringing up the sweater. It's a metaphor. It just came off last year. Like you've emerged, you've taken that off and you're like owning yourself. Like it's a big representation, of doing that. It's like I used to have pretty bad like adult acne. And so I would wear a baseball hat really low all the time because I felt like it cast some kind of shadow over the zits so you couldn't see them as much. And it's like, but it wasn't because anyone pointed a finger at me or was like going, oh my God, Tiffany's skin's horrible. No one said anything to me. Well, except one asshole I dated. If you're listening, fuck you. Anyway, but I mean, no one other than him said something to me, yet it was what I said to myself. So if you don't mind sharing, like what kinds of things were you saying to yourself?
Definitely that I was gross. I would remember looking in the mirror and being like, you're ugly, you're gross, you're fat, you're not good enough. Or I remember even crying, and I believe in God, so I would cry and pray to God and be like, why did he make me like this? Like, why can't I just be normal? But what even is normal,
I don't know. I'm certainly not.
Exactly. So just constantly it's the saddest thing thinking back on it to look at yourself in the mirror and constantly remind yourself that you're ugly or tell yourself that you're ugly or that you're not worthy or that you wish you were different when in reality you're exactly how you were supposed to be and you were made exactly how you were supposed to be made. And yeah, it was just a lot of that. I think you're ugly. You don't look like the people on the internet, on MySpace at that time. Yeah.
So when did you first start actually dating? Was it high school? Was it after high school?
Yeah, so high school. But I'm sorry if my mom's listening to this.
Hey, Mom.
But I actually convinced myself that I didn't want an actual relationship when I was in high school. I was like, oh, I'm just going to mess around, have fun. And so I lowered myself to that. Like, oh, I'm just going to sleep around with people. That's what I'll do. And that's exactly what I did. So my current boyfriend, that's until I finally gave myself the permission to date someone and like be in a serious relationship with someone. But before that, I was like, I don't care. I want to live the rock star life and just have fun.
Another lie you told yourself that manifested into truth.
Yeah.
Right?
That I wasn't worthy enough of having a genuine relationship.
But then you masked it and convinced yourself, like, by going to guy and being rock star, like,
right.
You convinced yourself, that this is, I'm choosing this. Like, this is what I want.
Totally.
But it wasn't, was it?
It's not. It's definitely not. And that's the craziest part to me about my whole story and what I see in other people, that we convince ourselves that whatever we feel we're not worthy of is our truth. And it's not. It really, really is not.
How did you, and I know it's not like some one sentence answer, but when we are so stuck in those lies we tell ourselves and those beliefs, I mean, it's like a very complex web that's in there. How did you start unraveling this web of lies that you were living?
That's a really good question. I don't know how to answer this. Let's see. I guess, so my current boyfriend, Kyle, he is my best friend. He's been my best friend for 10 years. And I guess when we first started dating, it was long distance. And he was always there. He was so supportive to me. And that made me kind of be like, if someone could care about me this much, then why am I not caring about myself this much? Like, I almost found it unfair for someone to care so much about me and me not do the same to myself. So that kind of like sparked it. But I think when it really started was last year when I saw that picture of me that like I had let myself get to that point of I'm 5'1". So being 5'1" and like 220 pounds, it was ridiculous. It was unacceptable to me, to my standards, And looking at that picture, I remember being like, I either change what I'm doing or I'm going to die. I'm going to kill myself. Not actually kill myself, but
Well, yeah, that's really unhealthy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what started off as a way to change my physical appearance, I knew that I had done all the diets before. I knew I had done the gym. I knew I had, thought about going into surgery and whatever, but that wouldn't change how I was feeling about myself. So I started doing self-development work, which is the hardest thing you could do. And that's really what's changed my life.
So who did you start? Like, what was your entryway into like personal development?
It was Lori Harder's podcast.
Oh, I love that. I love Lori.
Yeah, she's super cool. So I remember like listening to her, just this whole world opening up to me and being like, oh my God, what is this? So I remember I bought a ticket to her event in Arizona. And I told my boyfriend, I'm like, we're driving to Arizona in 2 days. And he's like, oh, we have work. And I was like, we're going. And I went, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. And I went, and that like changed my life, because before then, girls were not my friends. I was like, oh, girls are such bitches. They hate each other. They're snobby. They talk about each other. So I never had genuine girlfriends. And during this event, I was like, whoa, And it was just incredible. And after that, like I started discovering more females, strong females out there that were changing the world. And I wanted to be part of that.
I love that, because we always have an entry point. Like, do you know who Louise Hay is? The author? I mean, she's since passed, but that was my, aside from like Oprah, that was like my entryway into, I didn't even know, I actually had probably never used the word, like the term self-worth before, or being worthy, like never crossed my mind. I really didn't. I was that entrenched in my own web of lies. That's why I asked you that question, because, it's not like the web becomes untangled, you guys, like overnight,
No.
right? So tell us a little bit so people, can understand, like, what does it kind of look like when you're starting to untangle and discover all this shit you've been doing?
God. It is messy. It is so, so, so messy. It is emotional. For me, it was a matter of I found out I did not know myself at all. So finding out that you don't know yourself is so heartbreaking. Like, if you don't know you, who the hell do you know? So it's going to be messy and it's going to be difficult, but it's definitely going to be worth it. It's like when your headphones get all mixed up with necklaces and stuff and you're trying to untangle that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, I just want to throw this out. Like, fuck this shit. But don't. It's your life. It's your journey. So it's definitely worth taking it and figuring it out.
I mean, going with the like tangled like necklaces or your tech cords analogy, because you guys know Mama loves a good analogy. It's like, how when your necklaces are tangled and you're like, Jesus, and you want to like yank on it and then it gets even worse. That's a perfect way to describe like personal development is you have to be slow and patient and gentle, even though you're contemplating like just like throwing the thing across the room, right?
Totally. That's the best way to describe this because, yeah, it's messy.
So when you first, went to the Bliss Project event, for you guys who don't know, it's I would say it is kind of like a women's, I mean, there's men there too, probably, but like a women's empowerment event, self-love, loving yourself, accepting yourself, building community. Like that's like the whole premise behind her stuff. When you went there, you didn't have a bunch of female friends, you said. In fact, you told yourself a lie, right? That women are bitches, they're catty. Like, I get along better with guys. That was my line I told myself.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I get along with guys. I like cuss, like I'm a homegirl.
I'm one of the dudes.
Yeah, I'm a homegirl. Yeah. Like I told myself that lie too. So you went to an event that's like filled with feminine energy. Like Lori Harder, like probably shits flowers. You know what I'm saying?
I could see that.
Like it's like such a feminine energy. So when you went in that room, how were you feeling? I'm sure some stuff came up for you.
It was so overwhelming. And my first instinct was to look around the room and start judging. Oh, she looks like a bitch. Oh, this girl would never talk to her. And, all these girls are wearing their Louis purses and their high heels and stuff. And I'm just there like, yeah, no. These are snobby, rich bitches. I don't want to be here. What did I get myself into? But then Lori had us start talking to each other. She's like, turn and start talking to people. And when I did that, one of the girls, she stood out to me because she goes, yeah, my husband like saved 2-3 paychecks to buy me this purse. And I was like, whoa, like I just hardcore judged you and you're just like me. And that was such a breakthrough for me, but it was definitely very overwhelming and scary. And throughout the whole thing, I was like, why am I here? Why did I do this? Like, this is not for me. I remember wearing a pink dress because I thought I'd fit in. And yeah, it was weird.
Do you even like the color pink?
I do.
Oh, okay.
I actually do. I've always been the pink and black kind of person. But this dress was awful. It was like a flowery pink dress.
It wasn't like, it really wasn't you. You just thought you should wear it. I've done that. And that's when I end up looking like a circus clown.
Oh yeah. 100%. And I love makeup and I like being feminine and wearing dresses, but not to this extent of a flowery dress. And I felt okay wearing it, but I was like, this is not me. Why am I changing so much? And if you see my first branded photos, they're so weird. And I'm like, who is this person?
Because
So strange.
that is what happens when you start doing that work on yourself, who you are when you start it, and then even like 6 months in, and then a year in. And then for me, I'm like probably like 4.5 years in.
Mhm.
I always say like I'm Tiffany 2.0 now. Like Tiffany 1.0, I didn't even know what my favorite color was. Like I didn't know myself either, which was like
Mm.
when people would ask you, I'm just so curious about this. When people would ask you, like before you started personal development, and they'd say things like, "Oh, what do you love to do for fun?" Did you know how to answer this question?
Yes, because I had given myself a persona. I had put myself in, this is who I am. I am this rocker chick that loves metal music, nothing else, will listen to nothing else, loves the color black, enjoys wearing black jeans to the beach, by the way, with long black sleeve shirts in California, because that's who I am.
So you had
And
answers because your web of lies was so strong, it became a persona.
oh yeah, it became who I was, or who I thought I was.
I can relate to that. I knew that when people asked me certain questions, it would be socially inappropriate for me to not have a planned
Mhm.
answer. So I
Yeah.
created one. And I mean, it was like crazy the shit that came out of my mouth. Like it wasn't even true, but like, it made other people feel comfortable to at
Mhm.
least, that I kind of knew what I was doing. I really didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's easier that way to tell your friends and family, like, "Oh yeah, this is me."
So you told me something before we started recording and you gave me permission to ask you about it. So,
Mhm.
okay, so I told you guys like her name's Ruby Skilton, okay? And she's on Instagram, by the way. You want to go say hi or give us a shout out right now, take a quick screenshot and share on your social media and tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany and tag Ruby at Ruby Skilton. So it's Ruby Skilton, and let us know that you're loving it and share the episode if this is like hitting home for you. It'd really mean a lot to both of us. So she told me that's her name, but then when I read her bio, she was like telling the whole thing about like being raised Mexican, you have to clean your plate, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I know she's not married. And that is like not a Mexican name. And she's like, oh, yeah, well, I like 5 years ago changed my name, and I was like, it didn't like suit me anymore or something. And I was like, oh my God, you have to tell this. So what's
Yes.
that about?
So, let's see, where do I wanna start with the story? 5 years ago, when I moved to LA, I dropped my last name first off in social media, mainly because I was building my music career and I wanted a stage name. I did not want people to find me by my real name, whatever. So I found this last name that I was like, "Oh my god, this is so edgy. I love this name." So I started using it on social media, and the more people that started learning or calling me by this name, that's I felt connected with this. It was something that I had chosen. And even though it started off as a stage name kind of thing, I realized that whenever people call me by my legal last name, that's my dad's last name, I can't relate to that. A I've had a semi relationship with my dad, but it's more on the financial terms, you know? Like
Yeah.
he financially supports me. He's always been there financially, but not an emotional um relationship. So for me it felt almost rude to myself to create something amazing, which I didn't know at the time when I dropped this last name, that I was creating something amazing using his name. I
Mm,
didn't think it was that he deserved it in a way, you know? And I contemplated using my mom's last name, but that also did not feel right to me. And even though I preach about being authentic and staying in your truth, this kind of contradicts it because it's like, okay, how are you being authentic? Oh my God, can I not talk without using your actual last name? And the simple question is that your truth is not what you were born with, but it's what you create, what you make for yourself, what you want that higher self to be. And for me, that was just aligning with everything in my life. So from my last name to what I eat in the morning to what I drink, it's a form of me choosing the person that I want to be.
That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, it's almost like when someone chooses to legally change their name or even change their gender, it's something that you're doing for yourself because you feel aligned with that thing.
And what do you feel, and first off, what happened for you when once we know better, we do better. Mm-hmm. So once you started coming in and learning yourself and trying on for size, like what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and showing up, like you said, like where it's in your truth and it's aligned, what changed for you in your life?
Definitely my confidence. When I hear Ruby Skilton, I feel like the person I'm becoming, and I feel empowered, and I feel like I can take on the world as my true self. Whereas when I hear my actual legal last name, I feel like this little girl that we all have inside, but I feel like this little girl that's lost and doesn't know what to do and is really hard with herself. And I have to have conversations with this little girl every single day that it's okay and that we're evolving and changing. But it's definitely something that there's two different personas almost. And this is not me trying to get rid of what's legally my last name. That is why I would never legally change my last name. But it's definitely something that gives me that power, almost that confidence.
I see this with people who like change their hair color, right? Yeah. Like they purple hair, that it's not, it's not necessarily just like, oh, I'm trying to like set a trend. It's like, or I feel more comfortable blonde, but I was born with brown hair. It's like, own that shit, girl. Like I'm down for that, right?
Totally. And yeah, I mean, it's something so simple that can definitely drastically change. And for me, it was my last name. And for someone else, it could be what they're wearing. It could be something so simple like their hair color or I don't know, their height with wearing high heels. It could be whatever.
Well, what about with you taking the sweater off?
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, when was there like this, I'm like picturing this like movie like moment, of course, but was there like a moment where you're like, fuck this, and you took the sweater off? Oh my God.
Yes, there was actually. So here's the thing about the sweater. I was perfectly fine with wearing shorter sleeves around people I knew I would never see again. But when it came to like classmates when I was back in school or work when, day job stuff, like I felt weird. And that's so strange because you would think it'd be the other way around, But for me, it was this way. So the way it happened was one day I was like, I'm not wearing my sweater to work. Because one, it was like 98 degrees. I was not about to go, in LA, anywhere when it's 98 degrees wearing a sweater. So I remember I just took it off and I was like, I walked downstairs and everyone was like, oh, you're not wearing a sweater. But that's about it. No one brought it up. And I thought it was going to be like this big thing. And it wasn't.
It wasn't like, what did you think? What did you build up in your head? Once again, the theme of the lies we tell ourselves. What did you build up in your head that people would say with you walking in without the sweater?
I was expecting a lot of people to stare or to ask questions or to be like, oh, like, what happened to your arm? I get that question sometimes where it's like, oh, what happened? And I'm like, what do you mean? But it wasn't a big deal, you know? And no one was having like awkward conversations with me.
Like, because you can sense when people are like staring. I mean, I know I can tell. Like, so you could sense, and like no one did. It was
it was like any other normal day, except without a sweater, without me sweating endlessly.
But you had to get to a point, which I call the fuck it point. But you had to get to the point where you're like, fuck it. You know, I'm willing to risk feeling, you know, people judging me and feeling uncomfortable. I'm willing to risk that for once.
Yeah. And it just happened that because it was really hot. You know, like, I have put in the work, but I don't think if it wasn't that hot, I would have pushed it off. And it was weird because it wasn't the hottest day of the year, but it just felt like it was. And something in me was just like, today's the day, you're going to do it. And I remember I didn't even take the sweater to work. I was like, fuck it. Like, it's the day, we're not doing this. And it was freeing.
I was just going to say that. I go, was that a really freeing feeling for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. I finally felt like I could move and like just be myself without having that extra layer.
Like, yeah, literally. And you also, you know, you created extra layers with weight as well.
Okay.
You were hiding, you know, oftentimes they say this, you know, and, you know, I'm an adult children of alcoholics 12-step program. And there's a lot of people who are in Overeaters Anonymous in there because it's very common when you have a wounded inner child or you have that stuff going on, you actually create fat layers as a form to like hide in plain sight.
Yeah.
So you released those layers too.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And I've always been kind of shy. So even doing a podcast like this, I would get severely anxious and getting on stage. I know I was getting on stage at Nicole's events, like every chance I got. But before that, I would not do that because I felt like my story did not matter. So now, like, I found the power in my story, and that's what I want every listener. Like, if you take anything from this episode, is that your voice, your story has so much power.
And what made you realize that, you know, your story, the story of Ruby Skilton, like that you realize that your story carries that level of power?
It was definitely when I started getting people reaching out. I posted my first picture on Instagram showing my difference, and I got so many messages being like, this is so awesome, like it's so good to see you stepping into your power. And like when I first started songwriting, because that's what I would do in music, I was songwriting, I wanted to make people feel something. And when I did that with the picture and people were responding, I was like, oh my God, my story has the power to make people feel something and inspire them to take the actions to improve their life and inspire other people.
And to show up, like you said, show up anyway. Like, you know, like, and, you know, you're more than whatever we want to call it. You're more than I like to say perceived flaws. Right? Because you were, you know, you're born this way, like God intended you to be this way. So I don't see anything about you as a flaw, but it's, if we believe it's a flaw, then it is, right?
Then it becomes one. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And it's like, you know, even if, you know, you get a scar across your face later in life because something happened to you and, you know, you spend so much time lasering it and covering it up with makeup and all that. It's like, imagine just like setting yourself free from that. You know, I see girls on Instagram and it breaks my heart who are these beautiful girls and they wear layers and layers of makeup and they're always done up. And it's like, to me, that's also a form of wearing the black sweater.
Yeah.
In a different way, isn't it?
That was literally me. I could not leave the house without wearing makeup because I felt like I looked too ugly. So now every Monday I do no makeup Monday.
Oh, that's awesome. I do no makeup every day.
Love that.
I mean, when I like am on TV or speaking at an event, I get glam dunks. It makes me feel like extra sassy.
Totally.
But like I wear makeup like seriously almost never. Because
I love that.
It just feels like freeing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And when I first transitioned from being like, I'm going to stop wearing makeup, it was actually the same month that I took the sweater off. And I went a whole 30 days without wearing makeup.
Oh my God.
I just like stepped out of my apartment for the first time without makeup. And I was like, this is so awkward, but I still did it.
And like no one thinks, it's not like people were staring at you like, girl, where are your lashes? Like no one cared.
No one cared. If anything, I got the typical like, oh, you look tired. But I was like, yeah, I'm tired. I don't know.
Or I'm sure you also got people saying, oh, your skin's so beautiful and stuff like that, which you do have really good skin, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So something that, I know, I always like asking questions that I know my listeners want me to ask. Because if I don't, number one, they'll bombard me and go, why didn't you ask this? Number two, it's so satisfying when you're listening to a podcast and someone actually asks the question, you're like, God, I hope she asked this. So a lot of times when people see someone who you call it, I believe, like your limb different, right? Mm-hmm. So when someone sees someone who physically has something different about them, maybe they're in a wheelchair, maybe they have no eyebrows, maybe they have alopecia, maybe whatever, they have vitiligo, they have something, maybe they, have 7 fingers and 1.5 arms. When people see that, there is such a strong reaction. Why do you think that is? I don't mean strong judgmentally. It's like, there's like almost like an instant inspiration that happens.
Right. I feel that it's because when you see people that are different doing something that you're scared to do, it just inspires you to be like, if they can do it, I can do it too. For me, I love lifting weights, and it's something that I saw someone with no arms lifting it, and I was like, whoa, if they can do it, I can do that. So it got me motivated. So I could only imagine for someone that's quote unquote fully abled, what it's like to see someone that's quote unquote disabled. I don't like that word, but I'm going to use it for the purpose of this. Doing something. It motivates them, and it's like, if they can, why can't I?
Yeah. And I would say like, I also would say this. A lot of people end up going, oh my God, like how you said, like if they can do it, so can I. But it also makes people, because all of us get obsessed with our flaws, right? Mm-hmm. Like for me, like so many girls, guys too, it's like weight. My weight goes up and down. I have a chronic illness that I manage that keeps weight on me if my meds aren't managed properly. So, especially, being a public figure and seeing all the Instagram girls who are all like, super skinny and stuff like that. I can even, get a little fixated on that sometimes. And I feel when someone looks at someone who is whatever we want to call it, obviously different from the whatever we want to call the norm, it's kind of like you've accepted yourself and you're standing there in your power. I can fucking accept that I have 10 extra pounds on me. I mean, Jesus.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And I think that's what motivated me to share my story. The fact that if I could even inspire one person or, show them that I can accept myself, but also every day work on bettering myself, they can too. and that we're all on this journey of life together. We all have our own flaws, quote unquote flaws, and we have to flaunt them. And that's my whole brand, like flaunt your flaws.
Hell yeah. That's why, my whole thing is, you guys have to get to a fuck it point and show your shit. Mine's show your shit. It's like, show that. Your like shining points. Like, I want to see your, shining points too. But like, we see a lot of that. Like, show me your shit. Like, show me yourself without makeup on. Talk about what it's like with my brand, like talk about what it's like to have a bad day in business. Mm-hmm. Talk about like, don't just share like all the highlights. Like, that's boring. Don't you think?
And that's what social media is. You get to see everyone's highlights. And I think that is so damaging to us as a society. But the media has set that up for us. They tell us how to look and how we should look. So getting really real with yourself and being like, nah, fuck that shit. Like, I don't want that. That's not what aligns with me. That's okay. Like, find what your truth is and what your morals and values are.
Yeah. And when you do that, you guys, I mean, your whole world opens up for yourself, like just personally, because your relationship with yourself, P.S., is like the most important one. And guess what? You come into this world alone, you die alone. Like, you better get that shit straightened out.
Yeah.
And also for your like financial goals and, your dreams and things like that. If things aren't clicking for you, like you're like, Tiffany, why, I'm trying to get this going. It's not working. And this isn't working. You have areas of your life that aren't working. You're the common denominator. I'd look there first. Do you agree with that?
Yep. 100%. Especially when you're trying to create this life of abundance. If anything or everything around you is not lining up with yourself, then it's not going to work. No, it doesn't matter if Oprah did it or, Steve, what's his name? Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name, but Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Did it. Like, it doesn't matter which multi-billionaire did it, Kylie Jenner or whatever. If it does not align with you, it's not going to work with you.
Amen to that, girl. If you guys love this episode, take a screenshot right now. Tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany. Tag Rubi Skilton, and it's RubiSkilton. Tag us and share it. Share this episode. You know what? Share it. You guys got the gift of listening to this for yourself. You were led to listen to this for a reason. Why don't you share it with someone else who could really benefit, from hearing these words and hearing Ruby's story? You never know. This could be something that actually like motivates them into doing something really cool for themselves.
Stepping into their power.
Hell yeah. Well, it was amazing having you on. I knew it would be. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're such a freaking gift to this world. Thank God you took off that sweater, girl.
I know. Thank you, because it's so hot here. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.